Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Steve Seepersod coming to you from the campus of Binghamton University, and welcome to today's webinar titled Writing to Win Your Way. This is a program that's part of the Binghamton Learning Network webinar series. Back for another season. We took the summer off and we've been gearing up with some great content, great speakers, and the first of these programs for the 23-24 season is happening right now. Thank you. So glad to have you with us today. This is part of the lifelong learning programs that the Alumni Association offers. We have quite a lot going on. Very proud to announce that we have just launched our alumni travel program with 3 great trips coming up in 2024. Southwest Parks, Northern Italy, and Southeast Alaska. These are 3 trips that you can potentially join coming up in 2024. So I'm going to put up here a little banner at the bottom of the screen with our website address, binghamton.edu/alumni. You can learn about the many things we offer within lifelong learning, such as the travel program, tier talks. We have a book club, but lots of things that you can plug into here at the university. So definitely take advantage of it. A little bit of housekeeping, as we always have at the start of the program. Want to tell you how you can get your questions in. We like for these webinars to be interactive, fueled by your questions. So start now. So I'm going to put my email address up at the bottom of the screen from time to time, and you can send your questions in by email. If you're watching on Facebook, send in your questions as comments. On the microsite, send in your questions as comments, and we will mix these in during the show rather than saving them for the end. Of course, we'll have some time at the end for questions, but we will take the midstream, so send them in. Start now. This is always fun when it's interactive, and you are a big part of making that happen. So Writing to Win Your Way, at this time, we'll bring in our featured speaker for today, Natalie Canavor from the class of 1963. First became acquainted with Natalie when I wrote a profile about her for the Binghamton University magazine. At the time, had a new book that was out related to business writing, and it was a very interesting read, and we'll talk about some of that content here today. But she's had a very impressive career writing books, teaching writing at NYU, has a lot of experience in business writing, persuasive writing, and is very generous with her time to share her knowledge with members of the alumni community so that you can improve your lives and your careers in some way. So Natalie, I'll toss it to you. Thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon.
Well, I'm very happy to be here with so many alumni of Binghamton, and obviously I am one myself quite a while ago. I was an English major, and then I made it worse. I took a year of graduate school elsewhere to study English literature, and I learned a lot, for which I've always been grateful. But one of the things I did not learn was how to write for practical purposes, meaning anything to do with your business, your career, and I think even your personal life, because it's kind of hard to tell the one from the other these days. So what happened was with me, I was lucky enough to get a series of jobs over time, which I was terribly unprepared for. Um, I worked in sales promotion, and then I worked for some time with for national magazines, editing a number of them in visual communications. And after that, I did a corporate communications job for quite a while. And at the same time, I was doing journalism and later consulting and freelance writing. So it took me a long time to learn to write on the job experience that way, which is kind of scary. But I was writing articles and I was editing the magazine, so I had the right to publish my own work, which doesn't happen all that often. But as I went along in my career, at every stage, I was seeing people all over the place, friends, acquaintances, business associates, who were kind of flubbing their best opportunities career-wise because their writing was not good. I would say it's bad. So I started trying to share what I had learned from a practical viewpoint with other people. And what I found out is that just about everyone can radically improve their writing, which in today's world, I think is more and more important. I can't imagine working remotely without being a good communicator by as well as writing orally. And of course, writing is also the basis of all your persuasive materials online and in even visual communication, and most certainly oral communication. A presentation starts with good writing. So that's what I've learned. And that's why I teach. And I really have always felt a long time now, a mission to save other people the trial and error of finding out what works. And so what I did was evolve kind of a system which is kind of a method, a step-by-step method for figuring out the content of your messages. Now, what you say and how you say it are equally important, but there's no point in applying great writing techniques to poor content. So that's what's important here. So let's see where we are. Okay, so I'm going to try to do three things today, and it's quite a lot. And first is to help you sharpen your thinking, to gain what you want on an everyday basis, uh, not just for important documents like reports and proposals and grant applications, all of those kind of things. You start with email and a lot of and similar everyday communication, because I have a very strong belief that how you build your reputation and get what you want every day, but also in the longer run in career terms, is an incremental thing. So it's the everyday communication is where you need to be persuasive, because that's how people judge you. Today, pretty much you are what you write. And employers have finally come to realize that. And on every study I've seen, writing skills are and communication skills more generally are actually the top one and two things that they look for in new people. And what's hard about writing is that good writing is good thinking. So what I hope is that you'll adapt this kind of technique I'm going to show you now to everything you write. It's not just the important stuff. Okay, so it's really the three important steps are: first, to dig under the what's obvious on the surface for what you actually want. In It's a mistake to always think short range, meaning I'm writing this to get what I want from somebody I report to. Every message is an opportunity either to build a relationship or maybe to damage it a little bit. The people you're writing to will usually not realize this, but the fact is you are always judged subliminally on your authoritative nature, your abilities in general, certainly your creativity, your resourcefulness, your reliability, your understanding of the bigger mission beyond your own needs. So this is always part of what you're trying to do when you write any message. Then is your audience deep dive is to build personas, in my opinion, and I'll tell you what I mean by that in a second. But your people really are we are very different from each other in our priorities, in our hot buttons, and what matters to us. And the fact is that you need to look at every message you write in written form, but very often in oral form as well, as an ask. You're always wanting something from the other person, and it's if you don't think so, try to think of a message you've written where you weren't asking for something, even if it was meet me for lunch or please read this immediately. And today there's no such thing as a captive audience for anything you write. You have to engage people by going where they are and understanding who they are. And there's all kinds of ways people tell you about that. As a trial lawyer once explained to me, people really want you to know who they are, and they show it in how they dress, how they talk, the books you see them reading. In an office situation, everything about their office, what does it look like? What does the person like to relate to? So the people in your everyday environment include your VIP people, people above you and below you, or on your level as well, that you need to see their perspective on what you want and put it in their perspective. And I'll show you an example of that in a minute. And so the content decisions you make as to the nature of what you say in your message is created at what I think of as the intersection between knowing your goals in a very precise way and understanding your audience. And some of this is it might seem like a lot of work to go through a process like this, even for small messages. But the fact is, if you've ever sat there and looked at your blank screen or your piece of paper even and wondered what to say, you usually spend more time floundering around. So it's very nice to have a system to use. So all right. So to make this a little more concrete, okay, so which message would you write? Your situation is you've got somebody who reports to you, a subordinate, and you want them to go above and beyond what is usually asked to do something for you. So in case you can't read it, I'll read it, which I know is boring, but there it is. Okay, so here's one way. Subject line, need this Monday, 9 a.m., exclamation point. Tom, important, please have your notes on the such and such contract on my desk by Monday morning without fail. Thanks, Carol. All right, here's an alternate. It's different subject line. Okay, White Horse deadline moved up. Hi, Tom. It turns out we need to deliver our final version of the contract to the lawyers Monday afternoon. I'll need your notes in hand by 9 a.m., so I have time to integrate your findings and finish the reviews. I very much appreciate your handling this and realize this may take up some weekend time. If you run across any major problems, call me, of course. Thanks, Rick. Okay, so I once gave an assignment to a group of new accounting managers, and I asked them to write such a thing, and then we discussed it. And someone spoke up and said, "Judd, just a minute. I'm a very busy person. Do you mean that when I need something from somebody who reports to me that I should sugarcoat it?" So I thought about this quite a lot. And while sugarcoating is a very strong word, if you want to think about that way, you can. But think about the impact the different messages would have on the same person. Um, why would you want to be peremptory and just tell somebody what to do when you can tell them why you need it, give them a reason, and make them feel good about it? And anytime you have a chance to make people feel good about themselves, you should take it, even if it costs you an extra couple of minutes. It doesn't really, it gains you so much in the long run, because the fact is that if you're digging for your goal, beyond just wanting the job done, you want it done really well, I will assume. And you want the person you're writing to care about it and see it as important. Therefore, you have to understand that it's important to him as well. And from his viewpoint, he wants to do, you're motivating the person to do a good job rather than just a routine job. And if that doesn't work for you, think about which person would you rather work for? Would you rather work for number one or the writer of number two? It's important to make people feel valued and treat them with total respect and courtesy on all three levels of your peers, your superiors, of course, and also those anybody who reports to you now or will in the future. So let's reverse that and say now you're asking somebody you report to for something you want. And I'm going to make that buying expensive software, say to sort through big data more efficiently. So your immediate goal, is to make the buy. You want approval for it. But also, don't be more ambitious than you need to in your goals. If you're writing an email or another kind of message, you don't expect authorization from a piece of writing. What you're looking for, really, if you analyze it, is an opportunity maybe to, in this case, to show the software in action and talk about it in person. Okay, so long range, if you're looking beyond the immediate, you need to demonstrate that you're knowledgeable, valuable, a contributor, and you're somebody that understands the larger mission, and not just what you want. Audience, what's the relevant things you know about your reader? Well, if it's somebody you work with every day or work for, you know quite a lot. And as I said, you look at their office, you look at everything about them. Then there's basic demographics, their education, in this case, how comfortable they are with technology as well, things like that. And then the personal priorities, their communication preferences. Do they like detail? Do they like big picture? Are they a people person or somebody who wants to come in first on technology? Their hot buttons. What relationship do they have to you? Now, there are a lot of common boss characteristics that you can count on when just think about it a little bit. Is almost always somebody above you and all the way up the line is oriented to an increasingly broad vision, a big picture. So they're thinking beyond the obvious themselves, and also they're always looking to impress the people they report to, and they're usually ambitious, and usually maybe a little bit more formal in manner, but not necessarily. So there are all kinds of ways of characterizing a person to look past the obvious as well to their perspective. And one of the things I always remember in another teaching situation was a group of administrative assistants, and I asked them to write a memo asking their bosses for time off at the busiest time of the year. And they all wrote these very imaginative things. One was talking about how their daughter had finally was getting married after all this time. And another one had won a trip on the Queen Elizabeth or something like that. All wonderful things to listen to. So there are 15 to 20 people in the group, and we went around the table, and they all came up with these wonderful things. We had a good time, but not a single one of them thought to tell her boss what would happen to the work in the meantime. What provision was she making for a total lack of inconvenience to him? And of course, that was the first thing he would think of, is how is the work going to get done, and how much trouble was it going to be for him? Now, I recommend to everyone that if presuming you do report to other people, and this is also true with clients, people in other business situations, you actually take the trouble to write up a persona in advertising terms, or think of it as a backgrounder. I used to say profile, but people don't react nicely to that anymore. So think of it as a backgrounder. And what happens when you write is that you tap into your intuition, and you usually know a lot more than you know, especially about other people. So write down everything about them, and you will find that this becomes a really invaluable guide to how to deal with them when something is important to you. You'll have that in writing. Okay, so your process is, so planning the first draft is a brainstorming. So what are the points you might make relevant to what you want and relevant to the supervisor? So I did a list of what occurred to me in thinking about it, and remind me later. I also put this question to an AI chat box, and it came up with some other angles, which is interesting. So I'll mention that to you later. So these are all various things that might be part of your messaging. So what you want to do next is you scan your own list of your brainstormed points, and you pick out a lead. What's going to be most engaging to the person at the other end of your message, your audience. So here's my first draft. Okay, subject line, your lead in business terms. I always found the idea of a thesis sentence or paragraph very, very daunting, and I can't deal with it. The journalistic idea of the lead is much more conducive in a business situation. So get right to the bottom line. I'm told that in some of the military training, the whole point is bottom line on top, and it's a very, very good one. We not only have no captive audiences anymore, but no one stays put for anything that doesn't directly engage their interest, and they don't stay with it unless you write it well. So Subject line is your request, what it is. So they know right away what they're dealing with. And then the lead, Dear Sam, new software for deep data diving that will make our department more efficient just came on the market. Using it will save us time and money, so I recommend purchasing it ASAP. One thing you can always count on people you report to is that they have an eye on the bottom line, and pay attention to that. So anytime you can appeal to saving money, saving time, being more efficient, you've already got a very good argument. So, okay, so after the lead, you've got your middle. And when you realize your middle is almost always, or always is in one way or another, the backup. It's technical specs, it's more argumentative points to be persuasive, and it's the logistics and so forth. So that's the middle, and you have to practice doing kind of just enough. Not more, never say more to the point that you'll weaken your case. I cringe when I see a resume that kind of lists like 10 great things that somebody does at their job and ends with help with the filing. Okay. Never trivialize your arguments with something that's not important. So on this slide, that's more of the middle. I added some points. It'll promote collaboration, and it'll let us show off to other departments. And then I give it the backup. The IT folks have edited it and like it. And here's their memo, and here's the financial breakdown. And then very politely, you always circle back. Your end is solidifying your ask and making it specific. May I schedule a demo soon at a time convenient for you? Okay. This is a great opportunity. Thanks for considering it. Okay. Always a little bit formal when you're writing things like this. So does that work? You might do it differently. Okay, now everything you write from now on, think of as a first draft. I don't know a single professional writer that expects the first message they write, no matter, or the first novel or the first whatever, to be good. You have to sharpen it. So just kind of face it. That's the next step. I won't call it editing because people kind of veer away from the idea of editing. It's reviewing. So the things to note when you're reviewing something, and obviously, meet me for lunch doesn't take all of this, but buy me a computer does. Okay, so review your message for the content and also the tone and the style, which are very important. So does it convince inside your reader's framework? Would you say yes to this request? You're always your best judge. Does the message make you look good and project the persona you want? It's not a bad idea to write down a background or a persona profile for yourself. Who do you want to be seen as? Because you're going to find that you start living up to it more than you thought. How do you want people to receive your messages? And you are what you write today. So that's what matters. And again, people don't necessarily notice where their opinion of you is coming from, but it does. It comes. Writing is one of your best tools for creating the image of yourself that you want. So does it meet all the goals you set for it on all these different levels? Is anything missing? Because writing is a fantastic way to find out what's missing in your argument of any persuasive thing you're undertaking, because it shows you the gaps and what you need to fill in. It shows you things you don't know, because it ends up you're making yourself logical. Is the tone right for your readers and your relationship with them? Does it read fast? If your messages don't read fast, they're not going to be read at all, because we don't have time. You may have seen some reference to research they've done that the average human being today has an attention span of 8 seconds, which is less than a goldfish. I don't know how they came to that conclusion, but you act as if it's true, because it works. You have to write for speed readers, and notice the way you read and how much you don't read, and what your opinions are. Is your message as lively as possible? Because this engages people. Boringly written things are boring to everybody. Is it the message correct to the appropriate degree? You don't need 100% correctness anymore, but it needs to be appropriate to the occasion. And spelling errors are not allowed, and really awful grammar is not a very good thing. Okay, can you envision any questions the person might have in saying yes to what you want? A very good way to do this, which I got from psychologists, is visualization. Um, you can more easily than you think uh, put yourself in the framework of the person by imagining that you're sitting opposite them having the conversation about your subject, and look at what listen to what you hear them saying to you. You're drawing on your intuition now, and it can be very, very effective. And just have the conversation, introduce with your lead more or less what you want to talk about, and then imagine what the other person would say. And an advanced version of this is, which psychologists use, is called the empty chair technique, which you actually put two chairs down, you sit in one, the other is empty, because it's the person you're want the conversation with. And what happens if you imagine that conversation through is that you will learn all of the resistance points of the person is likely to have to your arguments, and then you can build it in to your argument. Okay.
I'll jump in quickly if I could before we go
Yeah.
on to part two with one part as a promo and say if you have questions, feel free to email those in
Mhm.
and we'll mix these in as soon as possible. But um, as you were talking about personas, I remembered back to when we did the interview for the magazine, and I was thinking I was going to jump in by saying something about imagine the person sitting in front of you and how you would say it to them. And I wrote down the mirror technique, and then you said the empty chair. I was like, yes, the empty chair. I remembered finally what the name of it was, and so I'm so glad that you mentioned that. And it, as we were going through some of the content earlier, it made me think of an episode in real life that happened where I was going to say, think about how you'd say this to the person in person and picture two ways. One would be off putting and make them do the opposite of what you want, and the other being the thing that would turn them on and motivate them to help you. And so I had a situation where I was staying in a hotel in Manhattan a few months ago, and I got to the hotel at 1 in the afternoon, and I'm like, okay, it's too early to check in. I can't get my room, but I want to go explore. I just want to set my bag down and go, and I don't mind coming back later to check in. I'm sure the room is not ready. So I went to the front desk and I said, "Hi, I have a reservation. I'm sure the room's not ready. I just want to leave my bag here if that's okay. I can come back." And they, without saying anything else, just asked me for my ID and my credit card. 2 minutes later, to give me a room. Mr. Seepersod, have a great rest of the day. And I was like, wow, that went better than I expected, because I didn't come across pushy and demanding. And,
Yeah.
I'm sure probably set myself apart by not being that way. And I got what I wanted by not asking for it. So by putting myself in the position of somebody, you don't know if the person right before them screamed at them about something stupid, and you could either add stress to their day or not. And so sometimes just taking that little extra to be considered, I think, can really help. So, but it's so quick. An email, we think of, I just want to get it done and send it. And even though, yeah, the send button is there and you have to hit it, you don't have to hit it right away. You can wait. And it sounds like the heavier the ask, maybe you just let it sit for a while and come back, do the editing, and then go ahead, and when you really
Yeah.
feel like you captured it and it has the right tone and that person reading it you think will receive it well, that's when you want to send it.
Yeah, and try it out on somebody. It's a good idea to have even a writing buddy, someone who's gonna tell you the truth about important materials. When I ran a communications department, we had a rule that nothing went out of our department without one of the other staff members reading it. And always, always, nobody ever, I don't remember a single time, of course, it was a communications department, where somebody said, you spelled this wrong or this or that. The comments were always something more like, when they were negative, you don't like this person, do you? Okay. There's something magical about writing where that you betray how you feel. Uh, so you have to really watch yourself when you're writing to somebody you don't like. And but the more you know about somebody, the more you can empathize with them. And let me going to digress for a minute. I'm going to tell you the favorite thing I ever learned from my good friend, the psychologist. And it was, I had done a real faux pas at a board staff workshop, the organization I was working at, and it actually contradicted the superintendent in front of the board. I mean, you don't do that. Um, and he was not a very nice person. And after the session was over, he said, "I'm going on vacation for 3 weeks. When I come back, you're at my desk like at 8:30 in the morning, and we're going to talk about this." And so I had 3 weeks to think about how am I going to handle this. And I asked everybody I know, and then I asked my friend, the psychologist. And after she finally believed that I wasn't making up how dreadful a person he was, she said, "Well, the only thing to do then is to talk to him as if he were the person you wished he were." And it's magic. Okay. If you ever have to deal, especially with a supervisor that you don't like, talk to them, write to them as if they were the person you'd rather they'd be. In this case, I did something like I went in to his office, and before he could say anything, apologized profusely for my total faux pas, and then said, "But because I know what a generous and kind person you are, I know you will not hold this against me in the long run." And there was this dead silence because there's no comeback to that. And so the conversation, you can manage your conversations when you plan for them. You can manage people to an astonishing degree when you write carefully and thoughtfully, and you take the trouble to think about who they are. Another thing I recall in the line of what Steve was saying was one time standing in a supermarket line very impatiently because there was a young woman and she was clumsy and awkward, and the line was getting longer and she was slow. And I was very impatient and ready to say something. And there was what to me at the time was an elderly woman in front of me. And she said to the girl, "Honey, are you having a hard day?" And the young woman burst into tears. Okay. So remember those kind of occasions in your own experience to trigger you to hold your temper. There's nothing worse than writing an angry message when you're in a bad mood. It will never go away. It's in writing. People will not really forgive you for that. So never do that. Okay, so if you were impatient to get to tools of persuasion, something tricky happened to my graphic there, but don't worry about it. Okay, all right, so think big picture. Some of these things but they all bear on your writing. People make decisions based on emotion, which in turn is backed by rational thinking. Okay, you look beautiful in this dress is more important than take a look at how well the seams are made. You know that a man might buy a sports car not because of that it's got a great warranty, but because it makes him feel young and adventurous. Okay, but people want the rational backup. So while you encourage him to feel young and adventurous in the sports car, you make sure he knows that there's a very good warranty on it, and or that the dress is very well made. So you back up the emotion with rationalities. Show, don't tell, always the advertising mantra. And especially in writing, this is important because it means just ditch all of the biz speak, the empty rhetoric, as I think of it, which says nothing at all except, this wonderful, innovative, people don't believe that and they have no time for it. Tell them what it does. And if it does whatever they want better or faster, tell them that. Know your story and believe in it. This is really important for long form materials, reports, proposals. You have to have your own vision of what you want and why you want it, and you have to believe in it. Somebody famous said, Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care." They want to know your belief. And one interesting thing, I asked a very successful CEO of a crisis communication firm, how does he represent organizations or people that doesn't represent his values, what he doesn't believe in? And he said, well, if you know enough, if you dig enough, you can always find something you do believe in. Um, so do that, when you need to. So more about story coming up.
I'll just jump in really quick. There's a couple of good comments that just came in from one of our
Uh-huh.
viewers. You should avoid reading between the lines. Don't read something that isn't there. Rather, ask for clarification. So I think that's a great thing to make known. If you're angry, put the word processor down. I 100% agree with that. And to tie into something you said earlier, one time I did send a message when I was angry and I wrote
Mhm.
something I shouldn't have, and it really it was like a no turning back point of the
Yes.
relationship. And so I learned don't do that again.
Yeah, don't criticize anybody in writing, no matter what it is. Do that in person if you have to. Um, or here's a favorite point of big picture thinking for me. Take account of the opposition. Okay. In other words, don't discount or ignore the other arguments. Take account of them and circle them in effect, like you circling your wagons. Like this example, the old process served us well, but now we have the opportunity to forge ahead. Or yes, floor wax X is very successful, very popular, but it lasts for 3 weeks, and ours lasts for 7 years. So, in other words, think about the arguments of the other side when you're doing this. Give people a vision of the future where life or profitability or something, even if it's small, is going to be better. If we train our sales force to use this method, our cross selling will skyrocket. Um, if we feed if we train this group of farmers, they will train 73 other farmers in this methodology, and the starving children of this region will have food to eat. So give people a reason why they should vote for you, in effect. Okay, create talking points. I don't know, how many people know about how to create talking points? Is that something we should mention? Well, I will, just because it's in context of writing, it's so useful. Um, but whenever you have something you've got to speak for, and it could be anything from a dissertation to, defending your viewpoint in a group, what every politician in the world and every CEO learns to do is create talking points. And it works well in a group, and it's fun, actually, to do it that way. So first you sit down and brainstorm all your whatever selling points, your strengths, your weaknesses, all the points that will promote your viewpoint, and all of the negatives as well. What are the worst questions you can imagine being asked that you hope won't be asked, and they probably will be asked. Um, and this is also true for job interviews. They're a very great way to prepare for it. What are your selling points? What are your weak points? What do you want to not go near, but they are going to go near it? And then, especially with your group, you work out an answer to that question. You end up with a list of bullet points, but however you want to think of it, just to key you in, and you don't take it with you, but you look at it before you go in, or to jog your memory. And the confidence that will give you is incredible, because you're prepared. So this is another way of scouting out the other side, the opposition, and it works really, really well. Wanted to say some more. I'll go back about story. Now, especially for long form documents like proposals, business plans, grant applications, reports, which are important, um, use a story. In other words, you should always know what it is you want, and it should feed through the entire document in a kind of sequential way. For example, a report on an experiment, whether it's scientific or some kind of program at work, it has a logic to it. And the logic really is, here's number one, the problem. Number two, why it's important. Number three, what we're going to do about it. our process, and 4 is why we're the right people to do this, and 5 is starting with your backup, your proof. So you go through that, and so you feed your storyline into the parts. Like if you're filling out a proposal, for example, know how you would tell the story, what it is, and a good way of finding out what it is to tell it to somebody else, especially a teenager, and let them ask you questions and see what the questions are and take that into account. So what you end up wanting to do, though, is you need to come through technically now, choose the right words, now the mechanics eventually. Never hedge your words, be positive in any long form storytelling. And anytime you want to persuade, try to avoid the negative. Even if you're addressing how to fix a negative outcome, you need to be hopeful and positive. You don't use words like maybe and sometimes and perhaps. All right, use short, concrete, everyday words and minimize abstraction. People don't relate to abstraction. And most of our writing as educated people tends to become very abstract. You need to counter this. And one of the most major ways is by your word choice. You may have read that most of the words in the English language that we use every day are a total of maybe 200, and are gravy in effect. But we learn to use them in writing. And to be persuasive, you have to go back to the short words and avoid the abstractions. And when they can tie to the senses, even better, because then they're concrete and real to people. And in English, there's kind of an interesting reason why the short words work better. The original culture was Anglo-Saxon, and it was a simple kind of agricultural culture, and the words were all short and simple and concrete. Door, bed, all the words you could think of that you use in an everyday way are from the Anglo-Saxon. And then England was, of course, conquered by the Romans and later by the Vikings, and the French, most of all, the Normans. And every single word in the English language, just about, that has to do with abstractions like justice, freedom, and as well as government, good living, things like that. It all comes from the French because they imposed that with their culture. But it's really been said, not just by me, that the short everyday words are what resonate with people. And I think it goes back to that. They are the words we trust. And you think of like the speeches that Churchill gave, we shall fight on the beach, on the land, on the, his speeches, none of them have long words, none of the long words. So most of what you write should consist of short words. Okay. Use action verbs rather than just boring placeholder words. And almost always, this is a matter of your review process, your editing. You energize everything you say by going back and using active verbs rather than the boring, flabby ones. And whenever you can use words with positive, natural, emotional associations, do that. So you want your language in writing always to feel natural, but it's not really conversation, because if you wrote down what you say, you would have to fix it up for writing. But if you have real writing blocks, that's not a bad way to go, is to speak it and record it and then edit what you've written. And that works very well. Okay, here's some more nitty-gritty writing techniques that are convincing. Now, this one is such an amazingly, you can make your writing look more persuasive, even more professional, almost instantly, if you pay attention to the cadence and you install a rhythmic flow. And this is very easily done by varying the sentence structure. Let me see, I have a few examples I put out to tell you about that. Well, if you write too simply, it could sound like, if you've ever looked lately at like a fourth grade social studies text, John Smith was born in 1430. He went to America 10 years later. He won the war, as opposed to John Smith, who was born in such and such a time, went to England in 1442. So, in other words, the whole trick simply consists of varying what you write by having, especially long things, which are difficult to pull people through, with short sentences, subject, verb, object, whatever. I don't teach grammar. I just teach practical techniques, um, with longer sentences which have a comma or maybe two commas with a separate clause. And if you do that with your writing, you'll find a magical difference right away. Another way to pull people through material that you want them to read is not using your headlines and subheads as dead space, but as journalistic headlines, to pull them along. So rather than saying third quarterly report, it's better to say third quarter upward 3% tick in sales, whatever. Give people information and guideposts, and remember that a lot of people, and the part of the problem with writing like to people you report to is that the higher you go, the more impatient they are in what they read, and the less they're going to read. So if you're doing a proposal or a report, which is important, learn to write an executive summary, because that's all they're going to read, and maybe major decisions are going to be based on that. So again, your audience. Okay, and your keywords, of course, always still count, and the language and tone for your audience. If you're writing to accountants, it's going to have a different feeling than a CEO who's much bigger picture. And this is another of my favorite immediate work, things that work, is to pay attention to the transitions between sometimes every sentence, every paragraph, every section, every piece of your document. And if you have too many transitions, in the end, when you review, you can eliminate some of them. But transitions are all the words between things and the phrases, words like later, ultimately, on the other hand, in conclusion, everything that leads to the next piece. Because what happens when you use strong transitions and the rhythmic flow in conjunction with that is that you come up with a piece of writing that seems unassailable, because it hangs together so tightly that it really works that way. Okay, create helpful comparisons. This is in literature, of course, this is really important, but it works in business writing too, and it affects your thinking. So let me see if I can find for you. Once in a while, you'll find a description, which could be a comparison, which stays with you. And this one, reading it, was a sort of popular scientific type article. And I saw this sentence about owls, and this owl is named Walter. So Walter, like most owls, is a very small and vicious predator hiding inside a giant airy cloak adapted to make him acoustically invisible. Okay, well, I'll never look at an owl the same way again. Now I'm going to see this tiny, vicious creature inside this friendly, fluffy outerwear, which makes him impossible to hear. If you've ever had an owl glide over your head, you know what that means, because it's the freakiest thing in the world. You hear nothing whatever. Okay, so the sum here is that good writing demonstrates good thinking. The goal always is to be clear, easy to understand, concise, down to earth, engaging, simplicity. Always go for simplicity. And never think that you have to write complicated prose, even if what you're talking about is very important or very expensive, or you're vying for $10 million contract. Nobody likes to read boring, businessy, cliched prose that embroiders endlessly without saying anything. And why so many people write that way today when nobody likes to read it is a mystery that I have never solved. So if you have any ideas about that, do share them, why there's so much bad writing. But the fact is that there is so much bad writing that gives you a really, I think, extraordinary opportunity to stand out. You will be noticed when all those everyday messages are well thought out and represent the best of who you are and who you want to be. So write your background for yourself as the person you want to be and where you want to be in the future. And in fact, use writing to figure out things you want. Like if you sat down, if you don't do it now, and write yourself, say, a 5-year career plan or a 10-year or 2-year, whatever, where you want to be, it can really act very magically because it shows you, as in everything you write, the gaps in your thinking. Are you missing something you have to know? Do you need to meet certain kind of people who you don't know now? And it's because once you identify the problems, the solutions are very easy. And the same thing is true with the technical side of your writing. Uh, if you start to analyze the weaknesses in your writing, and you can ask somebody to help you with this, if you like, or you can read up on it or Google it, whatever. For example, I still do that with my own writing. In other words, I'll do a chart once in a while, and I'll say sentences are too long, too many boring verbs. My, you know, Endless, like, you could criticize your own writing, because once you say this, once you write it down, the solution is so obvious. So you chop things up into shorter sentences. So you have the short ones and the longer ones to alternate, and clarify using boring verbs. Then you work on it, and there's nothing easier now than looking up action verbs. You can look up action verbs for any career field, and you'll find hundreds of them. Um, but the thing is, if you're conscious of what you do wrong, or weak, then and one thing I did want to point out before going on to AI is, well, maybe I'll wait on that.
I'll jump in with a question. We have about 10 minutes left. I know we want to get to the
Yeah.
cool stuff on AI, but I want to get this question in since it just popped up here in my email. Hello, this is a great session and very useful. I have a question I would like to ask you. These days, in the technology space, people use short chat systems like Slack to communicate rather than sending long emails. It's always noisy most of the time, and some team members make it worse by sending multiple broken lines to communicate than having a large single block of text to explain. So my question is, how can we handle situations like this? And most importantly, how to reply to such chatty noise messages to extract the message out of it?
Well, you can't control other people, but certainly you could set an example, by only writing when it's important, not including everybody else on it who's maybe not interested, and doing it concisely and to the point, and with decent spelling and grammar, so that they don't interfere with the message. Um, but how influence other people to do this, I don't know, unless you ask for. Wouldn't be bad for training, for using systems like that. But I think somebody should, maybe is there to take responsibility for setting some standards for it, which should be issued in writing. I don't know. Does that help at all? Because how do you? In other words, I think the main point is that how annoying it is that people are writing this way. So you want not to do it yourself, and you want to take the opportunity to do better than the other people. I think that would be the best way to look at it.
I also think sometimes about, do I want to reward behavior that I find annoying? So sometimes I get messages from people in IM that that's their first way of trying to reach me. It's just, you know, just how they do things. And it's nothing personal. Sometimes I find it to be a little bit off-putting. I'm like, well, could it have been an email instead? And if it's something urgent, I'll write back right away. And if it's something not not. So not everything has to be, because then you keep feeding into that cycle of, well, I can get a hold of him right away and he'll just answer everything immediately. So I'll just keep using the IM. It's like, well, no, that's not really how I want to do it.
Right. Yeah, you have to judge your medium, and lots of times in person or telephone is best. You can prepare for it with writing, which I recommend. The point I wanted to make also is a very good way to sound out the quality of your writing is to read it aloud. And this is not an unsophisticated techniques. Most of the professionals I know do it. Whatever they write, they will read it aloud, because if you find yourself doing an up and down voice, like the imposition of the composition, like a nursery rhyme only, you've got to go back and simplify your word choice and your sentence structure, because you want that rhythm that I spoke about before. Um, and it's all from the Latinate words. And the other way you can do it is look at the clues. I always try to never to use more than one word in each sentence ending various in these things: ing, ious, ed, ly, and there's a couple of others. Those are all these complicated words. And improving your writing, is like a web, and you can pull different strings to find out the weaknesses and the strengths, because they all come together. So if you go for the simple forms of your words instead of the complicated ones, and the phrases that you don't need, like in that case, or you just don't need it very often, um, you'll find that it's helping to control the abstraction that we tend to. But on the other hand, if you look for the words ending in ion and ing, and how clumsy they make it to read aloud, and you fix that to always to whenever you can use present tense and or simple past tense. This is alive and engaging and fast. So that's fast lesson in that. Okay, any other things to talk about before we talk a little bit about AI?
I think we're ready to go to AI, and we'll go a little bit past one. So, because I know we want to, there's some cool stuff here we don't want to miss out on.
Yeah, and also if you have not questions, but if you want to pose a challenge, like how would you handle this kind of need for this kind of a message, like a negative message, if you want to know that, then ask me that, and we can work out an answer on the spot. All right. Now, since I started putting together this material, I think everyone's got a lot more experience, or some at least, with AI. So I'll go quickly past this slides, but that's what it's good for: brainstorming, research, first drafts, editing and proofing, summarizing content. Okay. So that's what you probably know. Okay. So, all right. So, in looking at what's been written about it, the best explanation I've had, I find it useful, of how it works, it's a non-thinking machine that scrapes the web, meaning everything we've written. Like, I have to face the fact that every book I've ever written is on the web to be scraped. And then the way it works is word by word, it's predicting the next word. It's like a massive Grammarly, if you work with that. And it's just predicting what the most likely word, and that's all it does. So your role is to, of course, evaluate the results intelligently, humanize and personalize the message, apply the kinds of psychology we've been a little bit talking about, find the mistakes, the lies, the inventions, and counter them, adjust the language so it's more like you speak, and add the creativity, the imagination, all that stuff of who you want to be. And look at it as a not very bright new intern, and who has to be educated, um, and really overseen and given extremely explicit instructions. And I find these things more important. So it's all in the prompt. You remember the old thing that they used to say with computers: garbage in, garbage out. It's the same. Good prompt, good result. But most prompts are, I mean, the fascinating thing about the prompts is that a good prompt reiterates all the steps I've been rushing through about how to do good writing in general. It's the same stuff. Who is the audience exactly? What is my goals? What do you want to happen? Is it you making it clear to the intern how long the message should be, who it is for this message? I mean, you can tell it to be Warren Buffett or anybody you want, but that helps. What tone to take? It doesn't know these things. So some of the information I ran across, which I find really helpful. All right, so you see it as a process and figuring out the information and that you want to give it what I'm sorry, the information to give it to accomplish what you want and the directives. So, all right, so you don't use stilted computer talk like we're trained to on Google. You talk conversationally to your AI or write, either way. Then be specific and excessively detailed in describing what you want your audience and who it is. Not just I'm writing to my boss, but my boss is whatever, 60 years old. He is the head of this. His strengths is such and such. All that persona stuff. Some of it goes here. Give it a lot of context and links to resources you want it to draw on. You can tell it, take account of these articles on the background of this firm. Okay, and this is important. Repeat the same directions in a number of ways, using as many synonyms as you have to, as far as to penetrate a slow assistant machine. So, in other words, you would say, interpret these numbers for me so that it shows such and such, and you say, analyze the figures here to do such and such. In other words, just repeat the instructions a lot. Don't use negatives because that confuses it. So never say what not to do. Just say what you want it to do. You can actually ask it questions and tell it to ask you questions, which is amazing. So if you're writing something and you've got a missing piece, you'll say, well, all right, question you can ask it is, what do I need to give you for you to provide the best answer to this? And it will tell you. So think of it that kind of interaction. And I don't know, so I hope that's helpful because we're all experimenting. But the point is to spend a lot of time with your prompts, and some of the guidelines I've been giving you here are absolutely relevant to this as well. To know what you want exactly, what form you want it in, who you're writing to, and also giving it the persona. It might be you. So tell them who you are in relation, say, to the person you're writing to. So that, although, not all experience is good. Let me see if I have something I saved for you. I fed into an AI system the question of the example I used for you of how can I write an email asking for an expensive system for analyzing data. And no matter how I put it, what came back began with, I hope this email finds you well. I'm writing you today because I am in dire need of a new computer. My current one is outdated, has been causing me a lot of problems, frequent crashes. In the next paragraph, I have already raised this issue with you before, but unfortunately, nothing has been done about it yet. Never write that way, okay? Don't write that kind of sarcastic thing of attacking anyone. You don't criticize, you don't attack anyone, and especially when you remember that what you're doing is an ask. You want something. That is not the way to get what you want. And this really, if you think about it, it's going to leak over into your personal life too, as to how you argue with it with a friend or a partner. All right, I'm being cued. It's time for the last slide. Okay, so by the way, this was an AI generated image. I asked it to give me something that represented how people would be writing in 2024. And that's what it gave me, one of the things. Okay, so to leave you with some tools for your own self-improvement. As I said, read the material aloud and edit it for sayability. If you don't know about the readability index on Microsoft Word and many other systems, find out how to put it on. It's very easy. It will check everything you write and tell you what degree of abstraction it is, how long your sentences are, how long your words are. And by the way, there's been a lot of research on that, which finds not only are the one syllable and occasional two syllable words best for generally communicating, but short sentences on average of 14 to 18 words. So some can be 25 and some can be one, but that's pretty short. And over time, we have less and less attention span. It gets shorter. And paragraphs, depending on the medium, 1 to 3 sentences. And that makes it easier to organize too, because you can move around these short pieces. Short paragraphs give you plenty of white space, and that helps people stay with you. I did mention how to chart your own personal improvement plan. And there are, of course, good books. And can a book help you write better? I think so. In a book, you can look up a particular challenge you have as well as in Business Writing for Dummies. And it'll give you ideas and help you polish. And of course, a great deal of more specific material on what I've been trying to cover a lot, obviously, in a tight period of time. So thank you for bearing with me, and I'm happy to answer any questions or
Let's take a
clarify.
look. I think we have, yes, we have a question. So since we'll take a few extra minutes, we'll get this one in. If you want to write better, you need to write a lot and get good feedback. How about a comment on passive voice?
Um, okay, well, I wouldn't think of it as passive voice, as just passive feeling, passive sentence. You don't have to think of it from a grammatical viewpoint. And sometimes you need it, but often you don't. And anytime you're using a verb, let's see, and then he had edited. Okay, a verb and another word ending in ed. Okay, look at that carefully and see if you can't change it to immediate present tense. He edited the material, not he has been editing or he had edited the ed construct. All of that is part of um, ending up with abstract generalizations rather than specificness, which is, I should mention, always be specific in your and details can be very compelling without being wordy and verging into business speak.
I'll leave this slide up for a couple more seconds, so that way if anybody wants to jot down Natalie's contact information or take a screenshot, it'll be there for you, and she's happy to answer any questions you have after the show concludes today. So don't be shy. I love the AI example you shared about the new computer and what it spit out back at you. If my computer is outdated, I had asked you for this before, and you had ignored it. It's like
Yeah,
that's
right.
definitely not something you want to say. So it kind of reinforces that.
You don't want to say that, but on the other hand, it did come up with some points I hadn't thought of, such as this will uh, actually track accounting glitches so that we can save money. Some very specific things that I would have added to my email, and maybe with stronger points than I made. So you can draw on it and use it. And I have read recently people are basing entire business plans on this conversation with their AI, such as what are 10 ways I can promote a new stationery shop in Camden, New Jersey. And it answers you. I mean, it's amazing.
So some of the outputs can be great, some maybe not as much. So it definitely reinforces the human touch and adding your voice to it.
And your judgment. Yeah. And
Yeah.
by the way, if anybody has in the past or does have now a very hard writing challenge and you want to send that to me, I'll see if I can give you some, input.
Well, we're going to wrap things up for this afternoon. Natalie, thank you so much for joining us and spending the time to put this presentation together and spend the time with us live here on the webinar and giving this information out so generously to our alumni. So it hopefully helps them to do what they do better. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
My pleasure, especially for Binghamton. Thank you.
And thanks everyone for joining us today. Our next webinar is going to be on Wednesday, November 8th. We'll talk about search engine hacking. Star Cashman from the class of 2020 will be the featured speaker. And in just a short amount of time since graduating from Binghamton, has become a fast expert on one of the newest cybersecurity threats that's out there. It's definitely a show that you'll want to join us for. So thank you very much for joining us. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you at the next webinar.